Welcome to today's episode. We have a fascinating guest, Edward Brawer, CEO of PodcastAI.com. Edward brings over 3 decades of tech expertise and a passion for revolutionizing podcast production. Today, he'll share how PodcastAI.com simplifies the podcasting process, from seamless post-production to automated distribution and promotion. So whether you're a seasoned podcaster or you're just starting out, Edward's insights will help you leverage AI to enhance your podcasting game. So tune in, get inspired, and let's get started. Welcome to Using AI at Work. I'm your host, Chris Daigle. Each week, we'll be learning how today's business owners, entrepreneurs, and ambitious professionals are getting more done with smart use of tomorrow's tech. Let's get started. All right, we've got Edward Brawer on the podcast today. Welcome. And Edward, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, but also about your cool company?
Hey, Chris. Pleasure to be here. So, I'm the CEO of PodcastAI, and we automate podcasting. So right now we automate everything that you need in terms of post-production, distribution, and promotion for your podcast.
So as I shared with you before we started recording, on Monday, we've kind of hobbled together our own version of it through automations and Zapier and APIs and very complicated stuff. And it took us about 90 days. And to explain it to the audience, it took me about 45 minutes. Now, how long does it take for somebody to do almost the same thing we're doing with your tool?
Well, we can explain PodcastAI in 45 seconds, and we can set it up in less than 90 minutes.
That's amazing. So this is the promise of AI, generative AI, right? It's like, it's supposed to make things easier and faster and all that kind of stuff. And yes, we've done it internally, but what you're doing here is off the shelf. Somebody can, so where does it start? We talk about podcasting as a popular topic on using AI at work because AI contributes to it a lot, right? So for somebody who, let's start with somebody who's maybe hasn't started one yet because of the concerns about technological impediments or the lift required to get all these things done. Can you kind of walk us through what that process looks like for a podcaster using PodcastAI.com?
Yeah, you just open an account on PodcastAI.com, pick a plan, create a show, create yourself as an AI host. That basically means you're creating a profile of yourself. You're uploading a 3-minute recording of your voice, and it now knows your voice. So it can actually produce audio in your voice, which is pretty amazing. And then you assign that host to your show. You set the metadata for your show. You give a description, a title. You set some cover art for your show. So you just draw something in Canva or Photoshop and set that as the show cover. And now you're ready to upload your first episode. And your first episode is really just, record a Zoom call, record in QuickTime a monologue, maybe introduction, do a Google Meet, record that. Tons of ways to actually record your first podcast. You don't need to start. You don't need the production quality to be super high. Joe Rogan is probably the top podcaster. Well, guess what? If you look at his first 100 episodes, the production quality is not super, super high, right? So people will forgive you if you start without the highest production quality. So you just do a Zoom recording, you and your friends, you and a lead, you and somebody interesting in your market. Just record that. And we have something called an episode studio. You can upload your episode. You can, if you want to create an intro and outro, you can do that. That's totally optional. The episode studio will affix that to the recording on both sides. It'll automatically find something that's a good cold open and sort of put that in front of your intro. And then it'll give you a fully rendered video. But that's an optional step. You can really just go straight with your recording, upload your recording or your finished episode to PodcastAI. That's your first episode. You hit generate, it'll do your description, it'll do your chapters, your key points, your title. It'll do all of that stuff. We call that post-production. That's all the information on your feed that goes out to Apple and Spotify. At that point, PodcastAI will generate an entire website for your podcast with all the transcripts and everything just completely automatically. For example, one of our big customers, pretty big tech podcast called This Week in Startups by Jason Calacanis.
Sure. yeah.
Well, thisweekinstartups.com, that's powered by Podcast AI. That entire
Uh-huh.
website is synthetically, automatically created as a byproduct of using Podcast AI.
Very cool.
Yeah, Jason used to, custom website they had to maintain, and it took
Yeah.
developers and all this stuff. They eventually got rid of it. They just went down to a link tree. And then when I showed them, hey, we can generate this entire website for you, for them, that was a major unlock, right? They had 1,900 plus episodes. We exposed all the transcripts, everything fully searchable, just amazing for them. We automatically detect who are the sponsors in the episodes and show the logos. It's fantastic. They love the product just for that. But so we just talked about doing a website automatically. We talked about the description and the chapters and all that stuff. We also do promotion. So we make it so you can generate the top 10 viral moments for that episode. That's the top 10 moments that are the most interesting for the show.
Yeah.
Then you can generate the social media copy. So a beautiful LinkedIn post, a Twitter thread or X thread, Instagram post, YouTube Shorts, all the copy that would go for there. And it'll generate the clip as well. And now you can put those to those social media platforms. And we're working on completely automating that so that you can link your accounts and schedule that out automatically. So it's really going to be total automation. And we're even working on pushing to YouTube, which is the thing all the podcasting platforms are missing.
Yeah. Are you, do you have a background in podcasting or technology?
Definitely technology. I've been doing websites, software, apps for the past 20 plus years, or I would say at this point, 30 years. And in terms of podcasting, I've been co-host on a podcast for over 10 years. Do a video editing podcast, definitely. Just love it.
I'm always curious. It's kind of, a cheap shot, but it's like, well, how much time does it take human versus AI, right? So you've been around the podcasting industry long enough to have done it the old way. And what's the comparison? Okay, so the process you just walked us through with PodcastAI is I upload it, I change a couple settings, I approve a few outputs, but really it's a 30-minute process.
Yeah, so podcasting, it's as little or as much effort as you want, right? So people can get away with like episode 2, no description, no show notes, no chapters, no nothing. Yep. And guess what? You're going to get no results, right? Because there's no SEO. For the people that take the effort to do manually chapters on an hour-long video, that's maybe 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how good you want your chapters to be if you're doing them manually. We take it down to 30 seconds. It's just automatic, right? So just hit generate. Yeah. It'll even detect the ads. It's amazing.
Nice.
The descriptions, they're really great. You just click the button. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything, right? You just click. Our system is adaptive. It'll look at if you have a certain style that you do these in. You're coming in with a podcast. You're not brand new. It'll actually be adaptive based on the style you've had in the past. So yeah, it's just super powerful. It's a major unlock. It's kind of a no-brainer if you're running a podcast, really.
But if you said, I don't need a tool, we've got our process, we're doing it internally already anyway, and it's working fine, how much time are those people spending on the equivalent output? A day?
They're spending to do all that stuff manually or whatever their process is. Maybe they're chaining together a whole bunch of tools. They could be spending like a great part of a day on an episode.
So this is what's cool about AI, right? We've got all strata of business that listen to the podcast. Some of you have had an interest in thought leadership. Maybe you didn't at all, but hey, it would be good for my business if I did this stuff. But who's got a day to spend? And content is long play. It's not like a paid ad where you're going to see something and there's an instant result, right? So it's a long ongoing effort. And if you have a tool like this, it's like, I can do that on Saturday morning while I'm, hanging out, eating cereal or whatever, as compared to I'm running a business. I don't have a lot of time. There's a million things I could be doing. I'll get the content one day, right? So that's super cool that now any business or individual can leverage the AI powered tools to be able to get a result in minutes rather than, and I guess you don't have to learn. There's no skill set required? I mean, I would imagine if like any other generative AI tool, it's pretty intuitive to use.
Exactly. And there's tools that are kind of closer to the AI. You feel more like you're more exposed to the limitations of the AI. It's kind of a lower level tool. So there are tools that feel kind of more like that. We built a platform. We're in the application layer. We're orchestrating a whole bunch of AI models behind the scenes. But for you, it's just a magical experience, right? It's kind of like using your iPhone. Your iPhone's doing a whole bunch of stuff, and you don't need to know how any of it works to just use it. And that's kind of the gold standard, right?
This is a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting that. Now, getting back to actually using AI in the business, what was your initial exposure to it? If you've got a background in programming and software development and those sorts of things, I'm sure you were using or circulating with the data side, like the data science side of AI, the ML, the stuff that's been around. But as far as generative AI, what did that look like for you? When did that get introduced into your biz?
I would say the first time we looked at it was generative AI was about the time of GPT-2. Mm-hmm. And so OpenAI, put out their public beta access. We got access. And it was kind of interesting. We could basically say, hey, here's 10 titles of, let's say, YouTube episodes. And it would keep generating more titles, like made up titles. And okay, it was kind of cute, right? The titles were plausible. They'd be kind of made up, obviously, but kind of interesting. But you couldn't really make something with it. The major unlock was obviously ChatGPT about, I'd say 15 months ago. And the funny thing is, ChatGPT wasn't even a technical revolution. It was actually just realizing two things that anybody could realize 2 years prior. And those two things that it realized was, so these GPT models, what they do is they're an autocomplete. They autocomplete one token, or you can think of it as a word at a time. And so you start typing, and it's just completing the sentence. What makes sense? What's the most likely continuation of the sentence based on the start of the sentence? And so it turns out, realization number one, if you start the sentence with, you are an advanced AI agent tasked with helping a human. Here's the human's first questions. How would you answer it? If you start the sentence with that, it will complete that story one word at a time based on the premise that it's an advanced AI agent helping the human. That's not a technological revolution. That's just realizing how to use this thing. That's number one. Number two, second realization that made it possible. It turns out if you pass an array, just meaning if you pass, here's the transcript of what was said so far in the conversation. Now it's taking the transcript of what was said so far in the conversation and the premise, you're an AI agent helping the human, here's what the human's asking. Those two things as the premise, it completes that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what ChatGPT was based on. And the reason why early on you had tons of hallucination was it didn't have enough information and it would kind of just make up stuff. But it turns out if you start putting into the prompt, hey, don't make stuff up, and start putting in real information into the prompt, you kind of start solving those problems. Mm-hmm. And so ChatGPT is interesting because it wasn't a technological revolution. It was just realizing two little things that made an unbelievably compelling product 15 months ago, roughly. And that's when, me and my co-founder, we started realizing, oh my God, like it's kind of like you're in 1895 and all the parts needed to build a car technically exist. Someone just has to put them together, right? Yeah. Like steering wheel, engine, a chariot, you can put them all together and you have a car, right? So the first person to start putting these models together could plausibly build, an AGI. And by AGI, I don't mean, super intelligent oracle. I mean like sort of a semi-replica of a person.
Mm-hmm. It's in process from what they tell me. They're working very hard on that.
I mean, what we have right now, we have an ad read generator. You select which host of your podcast you want to read the ad read. You say who the sponsor name is. You put the call to action. And it will ad lib a 2-minute ad read in your voice. based on what it knows about your bio when you created that host in our system, based on the background of the show, it knows what the show is, and based on the call to action, what the sponsor name is, it will ad-lib the entire ad read, and it's pretty amazing.
So the comparison, as I shared with you, like, we built our own process with tools and APIs, and we're very proud of ourselves until I heard what you just shared with me. So the difference is that we've automated it, but we haven't really necessarily introduced a ton of intelligence into it. We use a tool that rewrites it, and then so there is some basic stuff. But you're suggesting that in your platform, I can actually I can train my version, my account, with those 1,900 episodes that Jason had for his podcast. It got a very good idea of it very easy to autocomplete for Jason because it's seen all of his content. Interesting.
Correct. So I have a friend who I started describing this to, and he's really big into sci-fi. And when I was describing this, he said, "Oh, like a beta simulation." I said, "What's that?" And it turns out there's a sci-fi thing from 50 years ago, and a beta simulation is it has all the things that you put out in the world and to recreate a copy of you. And it's maybe 95 to 99%, accurate, let's say.
Yeah.
Now an alpha simulation is a molecular scan of your brain. That's going to be like 100% roughly. So the funny thing though with a beta simulation is, okay, let's say we had everything that Steve Jobs ever put out and we put it into this thing. Okay, maybe it can get 99, 95% there. But the difficulty becomes, okay, what is Steve Jobs' favorite color? Well, if he never actually explicitly said it, we don't know. But if the AI has this context, okay, what color were all his cars and what color was his computer? Maybe it can actually infer what his favorite color was. So you really might be able to get to a 99% accuracy actually in terms of reproducing the person, which is pretty insane. So, that's where the tech is going actually.
Yep. So once you got access to GPT-3, like 3.5, whatever, with like everybody else did, did you immediately see the application for podcasting, or where did you start? Was this like a straight path for you, or was there a lot of discovery?
Well, I basically started working on recreating somebody I knew. So a business partner of mine who's a cardiologist, sort of creating him as a sort of an artificial cardiologist. The limitation was having structured output. So I'm going to get really techie here. OpenAI released something called GPT-4 functions. Functions means you get structured output, and you really need that to be able to do anything interesting, actually, because otherwise you're just getting inconsistent output,
random.
And it's very hard to deal with. It's unstructured. So the thing that was holding back that was getting the structured output. When that got put out, it obviously made a lot of things possible that are very interesting. But so started doing that. Then I actually created a parody of the All In podcast. So episode 117, they mention, David Sachs goes, "Hey, Jason, you're going to get replaced by an AI." And, Jason says, "No, Sachs, you're going to get replaced by an AI." And for those of you that don't know, All In is the number one tech podcast. And so I created a parody, like a 10-minute parody, and the premise was they're reborn as AIs. Put out an episode on Twitter. It got retweeted by Sachs, the All In account. Jason went super viral. I ended up doing 6 episodes of this. So that was pretty damn successful. It went super viral. We kind of realized, hey, we have distribution for this. People were asking me, like, is it real? Is there a GitHub repo? And me and my co-founder realized, hey, we could make it real. So at the time, Presh, who runs Jason Calacanis's Founder University, which is his on-ramp to his Accelerator, he was putting out he was doing a call for applications to cohort 5 of Founder U. And so I asked him, hey, should we apply? He was like, yeah, you should definitely apply. We applied. We bought PodcastAI.com. And we got in and we started building about a year ago.
Nice. Dang. That was fast.
Yeah, we went through the Founder U program. We were one of the companies that got selected to have a follow-on, like an investment, like a $25K kind of bookmark check as a first investment. We got that around June. We launched and got our first customers in September. we got invited to a dim sum dinner event where we presented in New York City in September. And shortly after that, we got invited into the Launch Accelerator, so the 30th cohort. We went through that program, growing like really, really fast.
Awesome.
Yeah, we and Founder U and the Launch Accelerator, amazing programs. We ended up going to Sequoia to pitch and all this stuff as part of the program. We showed Roelof Botha. If you guys don't know, he's the guy who funded YouTube. He's the head of Sequoia, which is the biggest or most prestigious, let's say, VC. And we got ranked number one of our cohort. And the way I did that is, so Launch Accelerator, they train you to do this 3-minute pitch. 10 minutes before Roelof rolled in, I deleted the last third of my deck. And I Googled what is his favorite wine. I found a 13-year-old Quora article where he answered and said, go to africanhunt.com to find a good South African wine. Found this random South African wine called Konotop Pinotage. Yeah. And I loaded his podcast, Crucible Moments, which is produced by Vox. I loaded it into our system because I was like, oh, maybe I'll be able to give him a demo. But I realized just waiting there, okay, my only chance to demo is this pitch. So we deleted the last third of the pod of the deck. I generated an ad read of him doing an ad read for Konotop Pinotage for Crucible Moments. And so without even playing it, previewing it, I just got to the 2-minute mark. And I said, let me play this for you. So I played it. Everybody was kind of floored. Nobody knew this was there. Right. Jason Calacanis wasn't even aware we had this. And at the end, Roelof, he goes, very good, but it's pronounced Pinotage. So that was pretty funny. He corrected the South African pronunciation. He was quite impressed and put us in touch with their head of content. So that was a really cool thing. Wow. So that was amazing, and we're just closing our round right now. And that's with Launch tripling down on us, and so really amazing.
That's experience. Fantastic. Yeah, man. Hey, so where do you go from here with, or where do you? Better question. Do you have concerns about technologies that will be imminently released that may mitigate the razzle dazzle of podcast AI, and how do you prepare for that?
Well, we're doing that. So it's kind of that thing where, what did Apple do when they had the iPod? Well, they killed the iPod. And what do you kill the iPod with? You kill it with the iPhone. Yeah. And so, we prototyped blog to podcast. So we found people that do blogs pretty consistently. Wow. We made it so it just scans their blog as part of the docket. Every Monday, it generates an episode. It ad-libs an intro, ad-libs a conclusion, ad-libs all the posts they've done into content and chapters. And it has intro music, outro music. It's fantastic.
So when is that going to be released?
So we have that prototype with customers. If anybody's interested in using it for their blog, we can do that right now. Just get in touch.
Wow.
And our first customer who started deploying it, once we finished setting it up, he asked, okay, so what do I have to do now? Right. And I said, nothing, just keep blogging. Right. This thing's on autopilot. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, so we just made 2 hires recently. Greg Perkins, who's our CTO, that's to go even faster on the stuff we're already doing. So building in push to YouTube, building in the clipping stuff in the cloud, building in connecting all your social media accounts to put out those social media posts automatically on top of it, all in one platform. So that's going to be a massive thing for us and for the platform. We also just hired Sean Allen, who's a really prodigious iOS and all Mac platform developer and engineer. And he's going to be building a consumer podcast app. And if anybody in your audience are Trekkies and you're aware of what the holodeck is, get ready, because that's coming and that's the future of podcasting, and we're building it. So the answer to your question is we're going to obsolete ourselves.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. I can't wait to turn this tool on. For everybody listening, I was looking at the wrong site. I thought Edward was from a different company. So I had done my due diligence, my research on the wrong business. So I'm learning all of this cool stuff right now, just like you guys are. And I hope that my content team, when they get this, takes the hint. Let's test this out. This is really cool, Edward, man. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Now, as far as one of the things I always like to ask is how you're using generative AI, not as your business, but in your business. Any clever ways that you're using tools for use cases that might be familiar to others?
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, for coding, ChatGPT is super helpful,
Yes.
right? That eliminates Stack Overflow, hours and hours stuck on Stack Overflow trying to find the answer. ChatGPT won't solve everything, but it's actually super helpful to unblock you or lead you in the right direction. That's number one. Number two, if you're actually coding, Visual Studio now has these, Microsoft Copilot built in.
Yep.
You can use an extension for that. Super helpful. Again, it won't write everything for you, but it will essentially guess based on the context what you're trying to get at, and it'll save you a good chunk of time. So that's an
Nice.
amazing tool as well. Frankly, ChatGPT as an LLM is useful for prototyping product. So what are we doing with Podcast AI? We're application layer. So we're orchestrating a whole bunch of models together to do something interesting. What are you, Chris? What are you doing? You're showing how to actually do this as well from a technical perspective, plugging things together. I suppose the difference would be we're approaching it as let's build a product, right?
Yeah.
So that we're maintaining this stuff. We're making sure the plumbing works, right? And now you get to use it off the shelf. You don't have to understand how it works. For you, it's just magic, and that's the way it's supposed to be, right? Your phone is magic. You don't need to know how the gyroscope and the accelerometer work. It just works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we use ChatGPT actually sometimes to prototype prompts, and the first prototype of a product actually or a feature sometimes happens in one of those LLMs, and you guys have access to those LLMs. You can do the same thing. You can figure out what sequence of prompts gets you a cool result, and you can keep manually doing that. But the cool thing is that can actually become a product, or that's the way you prototype a product. So that's another way to do it.
So tell me about the prototyping. This is normally we're getting people from all careers, but this is like episode 20 something. So it's not like we've had the widest spectrum of the working population. We haven't had a lot of tech folks that have a background in programming and understanding technologies application in the real world and things like that. So prototyping is not something that I've done. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you do that using the models?
Yeah. So when you're creating an application, what you're doing is you're orchestrating these different tools and models, but you're orchestrating in a way that's going to be repeatable systematically. So I upload my episode, I click the generate description, and I will always get a description of my podcast episode. And how that works is in the back end on our API, which is basically the application you're using talks to the back end and it says, hey, I need a description for this episode. And our back end has a prompt, it has a system message, it has a user message, and it sends it to the LLM, and it gets some structured output. And then it takes that output in a structured way, puts it in the database, and sends it back out to the front end where you're consuming it. So that's all structured and everything. But to get to that, you have to figure out, okay, what prompt is going to give you the result that you want? And how do you prototype that? Well, you could prototype it just in code. But the first step actually to prototyping something is just go to ChatGPT and write something that you think can give you a systematic output based on your input. So you are an advanced cook. I would like a recipe in bullet point form for this type of cuisine. This is the list of ingredients, and they're comma separated. Give me the bullet point form recipe, including duration at the end. Write the duration, comma, space, the amount of minutes. So that's your first attempt to get sort of a systematic structured output, right? If you're writing an application, that's what you would need as the output, right? So pretty quickly, if that looks like it's kind of working, we'll now take it to code and we'll start doing the development in code. But the first prototype is just in ChatGPT. What can you get?
Yeah. Okay. Now that makes sense. Man, I'm sitting over here and I realize that if I was in Bangladesh or Namibia or anywhere, if I had this tool, I could be a podcast producer. I could use your platform as the engine for me hanging a shingle saying, hey, I'm a podcast producer, and going out there and soliciting business. I don't even have to do a podcast to monetize your tool. I can use your tool as the fulfillment side of me as a service, right? Like podcast production as a service. Wow. Very cool, man. I'd love to be able to support you guys. And I'm encouraging the audience to go check this out. Even if you're not podcasting, here's what's happening is it's a lot easier to create content now. There's a lot of crap content that is being created because people haven't taken the time to get comfortable or familiar enough with how to communicate. As Edward was talking about earlier, one of those 2 breakthroughs, it had nothing to do with technology. It had to do with how you communicated with the tool, how you used the tool. So I would encourage you, even just as I'm not going to podcast, Chris. That's not for me. It's not about that. It's about you learning how other people are translating idea through or powered by generative AI, which is not now. Edward's doing a level above what most of us will be doing. However, it's a good opportunity for you to see what's possible when somebody gets creative with these tools. You can get creative with these tools. The tools themselves aren't that hard. Now, if you need some technical expertise, you find the up and coming budding Edward somewhere on Upwork or whatever. But and if you are thinking about generating content, I can tell you that sure, writing, some people love doing it. I do it. I communicate, but I'm not a writer. Podcast was easy for me. I enjoy talking. I enjoy learning and meeting other people, new people. It becomes now this, as you noticed, you recorded the video on Zoom or Loom or wherever you did it, you uploaded it to the platform, but now it's also creating stuff that can, coming soon, automatically be posted to your social profiles. So anytime that you've got positions on what's occurring in your marketplace or your industry or with your clients, if you take a few minutes and record that, you now have dozens of pieces of content that can go across multiple platforms. And it took you the time for you to remember, oh yeah, I need to let people know I'm an expert at something. It's beautiful. Wow, man, great surprise. I'm very glad that this, Edward and I had he was traveling. I was busy in startup land. So this almost didn't happen, but I'm glad that it did, man. So for people that want to, I don't know, obviously they can go to podcastai.com, and of course it'll be in the show notes. But is there any other resources or place you want to send somebody so that they can learn more about what you guys are up to or follow you guys?
Follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Edward Brawer. You can follow PodcastAI on Twitter at GetPodcastAI. And again, podcastai.com, that's the website. And whether you already have a pod or you're just starting, we're a tool for everybody. And we have some of the top pods out there. We just signed on the number 2 pod in medical last week. So pretty exciting.
Congratulations. Yeah, man.
Thank you.
You guys are going to be taking over. Well, I think you got a new client here. I think we're probably going to test your stuff out in the next 24 hours.
Awesome.
So awesome. And thank you so much for being a guest on Using AI at Work, man. And again, I'd love to follow what you're doing. I'm going to follow you guys on Twitter and watch the progress. Future's very bright for what you guys are doing over there. Cool, man.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. And it's great to have shows like yours out there to get people into this, because this is amazing. This is like the internet starting 30 years ago. This is the greatest opportunity of our lifetimes.
Super fun. Get involved, folks. All right, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Using AI at Work. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations about how to use AI at work. And a special thank you to our sponsor, Chief AI Officer, for empowering businesses with AI education and training. Visit their website for a free AI readiness assessment and AI strategy guide to help you get started using AI at work. That's www.chiefaiofficer.com. Special thanks to our producer, Evan DeSaulnier, for making this episode possible. Follow us on Twitter at the handle Using AI at Work, and visit www.usingaiatwork.com for free resources to help you harness AI in your role.